We're back for some more Dinosaur Park Builder with the second edition of Jurassic World Evolution. Building on its financially successful predecessor, Frontier Developments have tweaked their engine, dressed up the visuals, and of course introduced even more prehistoric creatures to hail in the third and final Jurassic World movie. In this video, we'll break down the game thoroughly and take a look at the improved presentation, the new dinosaurs on display and other ancient reptiles, changes to the gameplay, and of course the campaign sequel, 1 year after its launch with all of its DLCs and updates to date. This is Jurassic World Evolution 2, a year in review. The first Jurassic World Evolution, released in 2018, was almost by any metric a resoundingly successful game. Its launch coinciding with the release of the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom movie, delivering a visually stunning dinosaur simulator available to multiple platforms and to a player base yearning for a return of the dinosaur park builder genre. It's thus no surprise that Jurassic World Evolution was Frontier Development's most successful launch to date, racking up 3 million total sales by 2020, and encouraging future commitment to the franchise. However, Jurassic World Evolution saw DLC and update support for only a bit more than a year post-launch, with its last expansion, Return to Jurassic Park, releasing in late 2019. This unusually early cessation of post-release development churned the rumor mill for a potential sequel, especially since a new Jurassic World movie, the final chapter to the Jurassic World trilogy, was announced, and it would have been a rational and opportunistic window to follow up with a sequel to Evolution. Furthermore, despite the success of the first title, there was several gameplay criticisms related to its shallowness, and although the title did bring many unique dinosaur species to the player base conscience, glaring omissions of species already showcased in the Jurassic World universe saw much public push for their introduction. Flying reptiles was sort of teased in the final DLC, with only Pteranodon being added, but it seemed the engine lacked the capability to implement marine reptiles. And so, when the sequel was announced in June of 2021, one of its major marketing pushes was the reveal of Mosasaurus, all but confirming the existence of aquatic enclosures and the reptiles that will inhabit. The engine was also revamped to accommodate the mechanics involving an expanded aviary and lagoon system, and an attempt at improving many management aspects that were seen lacking. Jurassic World Evolution 2 is also a title in which Frontier Developments have worked closely hand in hand with Universal Pictures, ensuring that the models and portrayals of dinosaurs, appearances of characters, story content, and sound design is exactly in line with Universal's own assets. As a result, Jurassic World Evolution 2 is as canon accurate to the Jurassic Park/World universe as possible, and therefore can almost be seen as an official companion piece to the movies themselves. The game officially released in November of 2021 and has since seen a launch of 4 DLCs over the last year. This video will therefore cover the base game and its deluxe edition upgrade, the early Cretaceous pack launched in December of 2021, the Camp Cretaceous Dinosaur pack which launched in March of 2022, the Dominion Biosyn expansion launched in June of 2022, and the most recent DLC, the Late Cretaceous pack, launching in September of 2022. Jurassic World Evolution 2 features 4 game modes, with the Campaign, Challenge, and Sandbox modes returning from its predecessor. The campaign in this is quite a disappointing glorified tutorial that features a storyline bridging the gap between Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, the second and third Jurassic World movies. And so it's actually officially recognized as canon. Chaos Theory is a new addition that is a much more difficult setting than the campaign. It presents itself as an alternative timeline what-if scenarios that brings players back to the different movies' localities in an attempt to rewrite history. And finally, Challenge and Sandbox are pretty much what it says on the tin, and exactly the same as the first game, with the former a semi-competitive mode for players to complete objectives in certain timeframes, while Sandbox is your standard free-play mode where players can build dream parks without or with as many restrictions as they want. As a result, Sandbox is the usually more popular game mode, but upon release, many Sandbox features were actually gate wall locked behind Campaign, Chaos Fury, and Challenge mode progression. Since Update 2, this is no longer the case. Everything is available to the player in Sandbox even on a fresh install. The only unlocks now are rare cosmetics and skins from Challenge mode, so a similar system to the first game. The graphical enhancements in Jurassic World Evolution 2 are noteworthy, but it's also deceptively better because this iteration features vastly more complex and varied localities compared to the first game, which was mostly tropical in nature, being focused on the Costa Rican island chain of Los Cinco Muertos. In Jurassic World Evolution 2, the game will take players into the North American desert, temperate forests, and the Arctic tundra, featuring a couple of locations in Europe as well, greatly enhancing the environmental variety encountered. And so even though graphics-wise it's similarly comparable to the first game in terms of texture resolution, anti-aliasing quality, and other technical constraints, the sheer differences are in the volumetric improvements of the engine. Denser and more varied foliage, different kinds of foliage for different maps, and the introduction of underwater habitats. To support the new generation of graphics technology, NVIDIA DLSS has also been implemented, which hopefully should improve frame rate for most players. Update 3 also introduced ray-traced ambient occlusion, otherwise simply known as ray tracing. For PC users with NVIDIA RTX graphics cards, this option can be enabled to improve lighting fidelity even further at the cost of heavier performance, which can be offset with DLSS. However, since its implementation, I've experimented heavily with these features and have surmised that it's either extremely unstable or not worth it. There seems to be guaranteed periodic crashes with ray tracing enabled even on my RTX 3090, and subsequent updates have not solved this issue at all. DLSS enabled will trigger weird ghosting effects, very apparent when looking closely at animations. Another major criticism is draw distance, which makes foliage constantly pop in and out, depending on camera distance to the ground. It's too noticeable and should be customizable in the graphics settings. So as a result, graphics are similarly beautiful to the first game, but because environments are more varied in this edition, it seems like a major change, but it really isn't. And any real engine improvements to take advantage of new graphics card technologies have been poorly implemented at best. The UI is also basically the same layout, a continuation of the game's console-friendly interface, with virtually all of the gameplay elements provided on the left side of the screen. A few new additions are present here, mostly to add some much-needed quality of life. A transport button removes the inconvenience of having to select the function from the first game's ACU building, saving some time for the player. And as we explore later in the video, there's more need for transporting dinosaurs with the introduction of, for instance, the medical facility. A first-person view was also added in Update 2. This is a great little feature that has been requested in the first game and in other Frontier Development sim management games like Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo. In Jurassic World Evolution 2, it allows the player to select a starting point and mimic a first-person view of the game, with a primitive sprint, crouching, and flashlight function as well. It's quite basic, but it is a new perspective to enjoy the game from, and of course a new angle to take very intimate screenshots, especially with NVIDIA Ansel, which has returned from the first game. The interface in relation to the animals, as it is, now greatly expanded with multiple tabs to facilitate digesting even more information to the player, as a result of new mechanics such as territory, cohabitation, foliage, ailments, etc. And we'll go through these topics more in depth in the gameplay section. Finally, another great addition to the UI and the game as a whole is time control. Players can now pause and speed up time. We'll see this is greatly required in this iteration, as many tasks sometimes need a bit of respite, whilst other tasks require a bit of waiting around. Besides these key takeaways, the rest of the UI element is virtually the same as the first game. The database, a compendium and encyclopedia of sorts featuring everything about the game and some info dumps on the lore, also returns. Update 2 also introduced a species viewer. This allows the player to preview every single species in the game, their skin combinations, or watch their animations in a separated, condensed menu reminiscent of visual novel galleries, instead of having to waste time creating a park just to examine them. It's an inspired menu feature that greatly alleviates an issue at launch where dinosaur skins were kind of an unknown factor. Players often had no idea what a dinosaur would turn out looking like until they stormed out of the hatchery. Now players can experiment with skin and pattern combinations before committing to them in-game. With Frontier Development's closer partnership with Universal Pictures, Jurassic World Evolution 2 boasts the original sound effects and theme music as shown in the films, to be as consistent as possible with the motion picture universe. This even extends to radio music being played on the Ranger Station Jeeps.
I'm the former operations manager at
The
Jurassic
base
World.
game campaign also features voice narration from actors and actresses portrayed in the movies, with Bryce Dallas Howard, Jeff Goldblum, and B.D. Wong reprising their roles as Claire Deering, Ian Malcolm, and Dr. Henry Wu, respectively.
I'm a scientist. Some might call me an artist, a sculptor.
I just can't believe we're all back here again. How can we help?
The Bioscene campaign also reprises the cast from the Jurassic World Dominion movie, with Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Campbell Scott portraying Doctors Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Lewis Dodgson, respectively.
It's all starting to come together, just as we envisioned.
There is a lot of narration in this game, almost where every second player action is met by some remark, and I like it a lot. Especially when adding a new dinosaur to the park. One of the advisors will run down a brief description of the species in question.
This dinosaur is one of the earliest known animals, dating back to perhaps 216 million years ago. It's called Coelophysis.
Although I kinda miss the background park speaker announcer from Operation Genesis. There's just something about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to announce the arrival of our newest dinosaur, the Jurassic herbivore, Camarasaurus.
This addition of talent and layering of faithful musical and sound adaptations more and more presents Evolution 2 as a companion title to the Jurassic World film universe.
We've got to get it right, or this could all fall apart.
Well, we certainly don't want that.
The game, however, is still to this day too unoptimized and too unstable on the performance front. Besides the issues explained already with ray tracing and DLSS ghosting, graphical artifacting and texture plop-outs still persist to this day, along with a host of other game-breaking issues. Too many of my saves have hit soft locks and been abandoned. There's also a recurring issue I've noticed whenever I quickly alternate between the fast-forward time functions, causing much of the ambient audio to be muted unless on certain menu screens, prompting a reload of the save to fix. It's unfortunate that the sequel, which improves holistically on the presentation front over the first game, is mired by substantially greater stability and performance problems, even a year after its launch. Jurassic World Evolution 2's dinosaur roster is an expansion upon the first, with the base game featuring all of the first game's species from all of its DLCs. As a result, we see inclusions of film carnivores from Allosaurus and Carnotaurus to species that were added as DLC in the first Jurassic World Evolution, such as Acrocanvosaurus and Herrerasaurus. All of these are in the base game Evolution 2 from the get-go. The base roster also features some newcomers, the crested Cryolophosaurus from Antarctica and the Chinese long-snouted Tyrannosaurid Qianzhousaurus. Holders of the Deluxe Edition also have access to the first non-avian dinosaur to be officially named, the Megalosaurus. DLC additions include the Camp Cretaceous expansion, bringing the series Monolophosaurus and Scorpius Rex to the game, whilst the Biosyn expansion features the movie-accurate variant of the Giganotosaurus and the non-dinosaur Permian favorite that is Dimetrodon. The latest DLC, the Late Cretaceous pack, adds the strikingly coloured Australovenator from the Australian continent. Similarly, all herbivores from the first Jurassic World Evolution and its DLCs are available in this edition's base game, so many of the striking favourites such as Olora Titan and Centaursaurus are available immediately. There's only one newcomer to the herbivore base roster in Amargasaurus, but it is quite an inspired species to add, I must say, as one of the more unique sauropod inclusions. With the Deluxe Edition upgrade, players have access to Pachyrhinosaurus and Huayangosaurus. The latter was already part of the first game's base roster, so it seems like a massive cash grab to wedge it into this sequel's Deluxe Edition. DLC inclusions on the herbivore front include Minmi and Wuerhosaurus from the early Cretaceous pack, and Alamosaurus from the late Cretaceous pack. The Camp Cretaceous expansion also includes the series' smaller Oranosaurus variant, which I very much prefer to the stockier base game build as it resembles the Operation Genesis portrayal. One of the astonishing reveals from the latest Jurassic World Dominion movie, and one that has since come into the second Evolution game, is the inclusion of feathered dinosaurs, at least for a few of the species. The Dominion Biosyn expansion is the DLC to grab for feather appreciators, as it adds the Therizinosaurus and Pyroraptor, feathered as they are in the movie. This DLC also features a feathering variant for the Tyrannosaurus Rex, a light fuzz for its 65 million years ago skin. This is a great indication of possibly more feather variations to come. Other species, such as Velociraptor, are almost certainly feathered in real life, and it would be cool to have a more realistic feathered variant alongside their film canon portrayals, although I hope these aren't locked behind future DLCs. With the films moving away from hybridization and human-manufactured monsters towards themes of reconciliation, animal welfare, and, I guess, realism, there has been a reduction of hybrids adapted into Evolution 2, with none of the first game's far-fetched amalgamations from the Secrets of Dr. Wu DLC. Only Indominus Rex, Indoraptor, and the Camp Cretaceous DLC Scorpius Rex make an appearance. Flying reptiles is another major development to come into Jurassic World Evolution 2, and thus this is another group of prehistoric reptiles heavily marketed. Although the final DLC of the first game, Return to Jurassic Park, brought in the famous Pteranodon, this game furthers that with a strong cast of flying candidates from the Jurassic Park and World universe, such as Dimorphodon and Sciarodactylus, whilst unique additions include the Tapahara and Tropeognathus. The Deluxe Upgrade Pack features the Geosternbergia. Besides Camp Cretaceous, each of the other DLCs also include a new flying reptile. Zungaripterus in the early Cretaceous pack, Quetzalcoatlus from the Dominion Biosyn expansion, and the Barbaridactylus from the late Cretaceous pack. Even more fascinating is the implementation of marine reptiles. With the first marine reptiles debuting in the game universe more than a decade ago, and since the first Jurassic World movie, it's been quite a while for them to be finally included into a modern Jurassic World Park sim. Henceforth, Evolution 2's base roster includes all the marine favorites from the canon and in public imagination, such as Mosasaurus, Leopleurodon, and Elasmosaurus. The Deluxe Upgrade Pack features the Attenborosaurus. Kronosaurus is available in the early Cretaceous pack, and Styxosaurus in the late Cretaceous pack. As the game is set after the events of the second film, in which many dinosaurs have escaped into the contiguous North American continent and have begun to thrive across its different biomes, in many of the campaign, challenge, and chaos fury modes, wild dinosaurs will appear. It's actually a key part of the Department of Fish and Wildlife campaign operations, as in this game there's less emphasis about breeding new dinosaurs, rather it's more about wrangling them from the wild to rehabilitate them. As a result, many populations can be tranquilized and transported from the outer rims of these maps. For instance, in the arid Arizona map, a small pod of Chasmosaurus can be seen living near waterholes. Dinosaurs now have an expanded comfort system which takes into account a greater depth of habitat parameters. They now form a territory, slowly over time, that encompasses their living space. In this territory, a certain minimum of area and same species population is required. Self-explanatory really from the first game, but also cohabitation is a reworked metric that dictates which species can live amongst each other. The use of the cohabitation preference tab is useful here, as putting two species that dislike each other penalizes their comfort score. Within that territory, certain environmental needs must be met to keep the animal healthy and comfortable. Herbivores, for instance, now need certain plant types they specifically feed on, whilst carnivores need sources of live prey. This also means that the overall food system has been reworked, with the entire herbivore feeder system removed. Since it was explained in Jurassic World Dominion that the herbivores have adapted to feed on the natural flora after the dispersal, it's a convenient justification to reduce micromanagement. The other reptiles have similar, if more simplistic, comfort parameters, with pterosaurs requiring suitable terrain such as sand, rocks, and a source of fish for food, whilst marine reptiles simply are concerned with space and a correct feeder, either a marine fish or shark feeder, since the lagoon environment itself is mostly prefabricated and can't really be customized by the player. An improved social system generates a variety of new animation triggers to add a deeper sense of animal realism. Herding and pack behavior is more established. Herbivores will be seen grazing and browsing on the actual flora within their habitat space. Alpha status will be contested through periodic but non-lethal fighting, all these making for a much more immersive viewing experience. If the first game was poor in terms of recycling animations and animals generally being perceived as static and robotic, Jurassic World Evolution 2 is definitely a step up. Flying reptiles and marine reptiles are a bit more limited, however, mostly looped animations. They either stand still, they roam, or feed. Pterosaurs at least somewhat interact with the objects placed in the aviary, like rocks or platforms, but there's no such interaction for marine reptiles. I like to compare this to Planet Zoo's differentiation between the fleshed out habitat animals and the smaller and more restricted exhibit animals, but in many ways that comparison is mute because flying and marine reptiles can sometimes exceed the dinosaurs in size and should be treated as equally major assets of the park. Instead, they are now the ones that feel static, lifeless, and robotic. Regardless, it's still quite a break from the first game. Evolution 2 sees a vast improvement in its portrayal of prehistoric animals. Feathered dinosaurs, non-dinosaur synapsids, flying reptiles, and marine reptiles, although mostly spurred on by progressive adaptations in the movie universe, have nevertheless cemented Jurassic World Evolution 2 as the most biodiverse prehistoric park simulator to date, and each of them are, again, exceptionally detailed, with this sequel carrying over its predecessor's standard of portraying the animals. No real criticisms here. A deeper behavioral framework is also applied to the land species in the game, with a more realistic comfort system and new animations greatly enhancing the biological experience for the player. Whilst the addition of flying and marine reptiles is no doubt extremely popular, they somehow feel a bit underdeveloped compared to ordinary dinosaurs, despite this new sequel attempting to unleash the engine's capabilities to support them in the first place. Much of the gameplay loop in Evolution 2 has been adapted from the first game, with incremental improvements rather than wide-sweeping changes. Many returning players will see obvious similarities. I think the devs have tried to experiment with many new mechanics, but it's more nuanced than just evaluating them as straight up good or bad. One of the biggest management introductions are scientists. Scientists must now be hired to perform many of the tasks associated with running a park, with their pay contributing as a per-minute upkeep. Scientists can be hired, fired, and upgraded from a new management screen, with each having a range of skills within either logistics, genetics, or welfare branches, and a trait that provides unique buffs. Logistics is used for researching and expeditions, genetics are used for more research tasks, fossil genome extraction and dinosaur synthesis at the hatchery, whilst welfare is involved with incubation and hatching eggs, as well as veterinarian operations around the park. It's thus good to have a balance of different skill sets in your scientist roster. Scientists can be further upgraded through research to improve their skills, as each of them have higher potential skills than when they were hired. As a result, scientists can progressively get better and better, and this is useful for later, highly skilled task and research projects. Furthermore, every time scientists perform tasks, their unrest increases to the point where they can become disgruntled and refuse to do any work. So they must be occasionally rested within a staff center. This is a new building added to facilitate this function and can also be improved with upgrade slots to make it more efficient. With this new feature, there is a lot more static gameplay generated. What I mean by that is there's a lot of waiting around. Waiting for scientists to do this, to do that, to finish their breaks. The first game was already a lot of waiting around, but now there's extra clicks in between. Suddenly you're not worrying about just the animals, but some of the people as well now. At least there's fast forward. The power system has been changed to make it more economically feasible in the early game. Power stations are now locked in the early research nodes, so players must make do initially with backup generators, a small outlet that uses fuel which needs to be periodically replenished for a cost in money. Backup generators will be used over much of the campaign as players will be sent to rural locations without established infrastructure.
We are making excellent progress, so let's stay focused. Next step, building a backup generator.
Once persistent power is unlocked, these use the same pylon and substation system as the first game, but backup generators nevertheless still have a purpose. During storms and sabotage events that may knock out your main power grid, backup generators can provide emergency power to keep critical facilities online. I suggest putting one or two near the main administrative buildings such as the response facility. Oh, and you can move every single building in the game now. This is especially useful with the substations and pylons when trying to min-max the power grid. Talking about response facilities, this new building is a merger of the Ranger Station and ACU from the first game, supporting both Capture Team and Ranger Team operations simultaneously. There is now a fuel system though, so players must keep checking their stockpile, otherwise these vehicles won't be able to perform their tasks. The Capture Team helicopter can tranquilize dinosaurs or shoot stimulants to wake them up. A new feature added is the ability to lock onto targets instead of manually aiming. This is especially useful for those that may have a bit of trouble aiming, such as geriatric players like myself. Just kidding, but it's a nice quality of life feature. Think of it like aimbot. Ranger Jeeps, however, have a much more pronounced animal welfare role in this sequel. Dinosaur comfort levels must be constantly monitored by rangers as the information expires over time. Here they can use their binocular functions to analyze the species. Alongside this, they also are equipped with flares to disperse animals and a wrangle mechanic introduced with Update 3 to summon or send herbivores to a certain location, reducing the need to manually tranquilize and transport. Animals in the park now exhibit ailments. These can be diseases like the first game or physical injuries from combat. With the new Paleo Medical Facility, the mobile vet unit can be sent out to monitor dinosaur ailments. Again, this should be done periodically. Any ailments will be described in a new dedicated ailments tab, where it will also show how to resolve said issues. Some just naturally heal over time, such as common colds. Diseases often require some research to be done and a cure to be dispensed. Other major ailments may require the animal to be transported directly to the Paleo Medical Facility for treatment. hypothermia from a snowstorm, or injuries from combat are some common causations. Although this greatly adds depth to animal welfare, it's another avenue of potential busy work. Over time, ailments are an assured occurrence and have to be attended to, the system further integrating within scientists that are needed to heal them. Assisting both the response and paleomedical facility is a new building called the Ranger Post. Placing one of these in a habitat, then assigning certain vehicles, automates the monitoring process where rangers will auto-scan species and refill any feeders. Mobile vets will schedule medical checkups, whilst capture teams will auto-tranquilize any rampaging or escaping dinosaurs. This was actually a building idea I suggested a long time ago in my new attraction and building DLC ideas video for the first game, so that's pretty neat. Thus, the increased busy work introduced by these two mechanics are marginally offset by the introduction of the Ranger Post, and I do like the increased strategy of placing gates and posts around to facilitate a smoother operation. Since Ranger and mobile vet jeeps can't go through dense foliage, it's something to keep in mind when designing their pathways. Streamlining dinosaur operations is also apparent. The Expedition Center now only purely handles sending out expedition teams, which is based on scientists' logistics skill, whilst the new Science Center handles both research and fossil extraction, mostly based on scientists' genetic skill. As a result, the Fossil Center is made entirely redundant and thus removed. There are now two operations to breed dinosaurs in the hatchery, synthesizing a species, then incubating its eggs. These are performed by genetic and welfare scientist skills respectively. This two-step process means that batches of eggs can be created before choosing certain individual eggs to be incubated, discarding the rest. This is absolutely a major game changer, as it allows more precise player control on which dinosaurs they want in their park, as well as how many. It's particularly great for species with minimum population requirements like Stegosaurus, so you can incubate enough of the required amount before releasing them all at once. And yes, a batch of eggs fully incubated will depart from the hatchery altogether, so it's much easier to get them to immediately form a large herd. Another major quality of life feature is the ability to release from airlift. So instead of building a holding pen, players can directly transport dinosaurs from the hatchery confines to another enclosure without having to do the tedious back and forth in the first game. With the Biosyn expansion, feathered dinosaurs make an appearance, and interestingly they require 100% fully completed genome in order to be produced. We can infer from this, and the movie canon, that feathering is perhaps truly present on many dinosaurs. It's just that the genetic sequence produced by InGen and later Masrani has always been incomplete, which is why it's been explained as being complemented with chicken, amphibian, or crocodile DNA. And so the new Biosyn has somehow unlocked the potential of a full genetic code. Hopefully this is a justification springboard to add in more feathered skins for many other theropods. Aviaries are a new interlocking procedural building to accommodate flying reptiles. Each aviary dome can be expanded along its hexagonal axis. Aviaries have their own dedicated hatcheries and viewing galleries, which must be placed at the edges, but otherwise everything inside can be terraformed and customized. Aviaries pretty much play similar to normal land dinosaurs. You synthesize a batch of eggs, then incubate, then release. All of the flying reptiles are piscivores, so they require shallow water in order to place a fish feeder. Furthermore, the aviary hatchery acts as the ranger post. Ranger, mobile vet, and capture teams can be assigned here and will use drones from this location to operate on the species within the aviary. The lagoon is similar in this regard. It's also built using hexagonal pieces, with likewise dedicated hatcheries where monitoring and medical operations can be performed, and dedicated viewing galleries for the guests to enjoy them. There is way less customization, however, since lagoons are predefined and feeders have to be placed on the edges. Many marine reptiles have huge space requirements, yet dislike other species, so in order to exhibit many of them, players will often have to require multiple lagoons. It's not very space efficient. in contrast with pterosaurs, where many of them can be exhibited in a large mixed species aviary. There's some incremental improvements to the guest management system. Guests will be categorized into one of 4 interest groups and will be attracted to the park depending on their individual desires, so players can appeal to a select few guest types or try to value them all. Once inside the park, guests require amenity needs in food, drink, shopping, restroom, emergency shelters, accommodation, and transport. It's not dissimilar from the first game. However, the amenities can be configured to a greater degree by appealing to these guest types. If you've got more nature lovers, consider selling products or adding modules that complement them to prevent overcrowding. Min-maxing these parameters is very brain dead, to be completely honest, as it's simply just toggling things on and off to see what brings in the most profit. Of course, guests also need to be entertained, and this is summarized as the appeal of the park. The amount of dinosaurs visible and the variety of species in the park dictate the majority of the appeal, but new guest attraction buildings can also provide one-off bonuses. Again, these can be configured to attract different types of guests. Unlike the previous game, park rating is entirely determined by income per minute. Yes, income. So to achieve high park rating, you have to churn more and more guests through the park to get ticket sales up and keeping guest comfort levels high and thus getting them to splash on amenities. It's a ridiculous notion that will confuse many returning players. Park rating entirely dictated by economic performance is ultimately a huge negative in the game's management simulation and somewhat ironic given the moral messaging of the franchise. Finally, we'll take a look at disasters. With different maps and a greater variety of dinosaurs, there's many new unique occurrences. Tornadoes and disease outbreaks return from the first game, but snowstorms in alpine and taiga maps and dust storms in desert maps are unique to those biomes. All these events, they distress the animals, cause their comfort levels to plummet, often triggering escape attempts. With strategic placement of ranger posts, however, capture teams can usually get to tranquilizing these pretty quickly. Flying reptiles will also smash the aviary and escape. Overall, it's the same cat and mouse shenanigan as the first game. Marine reptiles, on the other hand, they can't escape, they simply just attack the lagoon walls and can therefore injure themselves, but aren't that much of an external security threat. Of course, most of these gameplay elements can be entirely ignored with the slew of sandbox settings available. As a saving grace, at least the sandbox options are even more in-depth than the first game, allowing players to fine-tune exactly every single mechanic. Tedious tasks such as fuel, power, scientist, research, it doesn't really matter in sandbox, you can just turn them off. Creatively, Jurassic World Evolution 2 is not much of an improvement on the first game. There is indeed more terraforming capability with different types of foliage and individual rock pieces, but this isn't dissimilar from the current state of the first game, where these features were added in later post-release updates. Some decorative elements are ploppable, and buildings can be customized to have different skins and decorations. With all the DLCs, players have access to different building varieties as well, either Jurassic World, Jurassic Park, the DFW, or Biosyn models, but creativity is still anchored by the same simplistic execution from the first game. Maps are still disappointingly small, and there's no interactivity with water features that could equally pose as an escape point for marine reptiles. It seems like this game was willed into existence purely to feature the prehistoric trifecta of land, flying, and marine reptiles. And the land dinosaurs are still the star of the show. The other groups, particularly marine reptiles, have been implemented haphazardly with little or no interactivity, almost giving the sense they were rushed to release. The management aspects have yielded more busy work as an illusion of increasing management depth. Resting scientists, refueling, a host of ailments to watch out for. Although there are new methods to reduce workload and automate some of these processes, like a cleaner UI, merging of redundant buildings, and introduction of the ranger post, overall I still find myself moving my camera around a lot and clicking my mouse a whole lot more than the first game, without actually feeling like I'm managing the park. It's more like I'm doing menial labor. Despite all the improvements in regards to other aspects, gameplay-wise, Jurassic World Evolution 2 does indeed seem like a glorified update to the first title. And once again, the only redemption is its limitless sandbox mode, where players can opt out of all that unnecessary garbage. As we noted before, Jurassic World Evolution 2 actually features two campaign modes: a traditional lore-based canon that follows Claire and Owen's exploits in the service of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and an alternate history Chaos Fury mode, which puts the player in the control seat to change the destiny of scenarios based on each movie. The base game DFW campaign is set between the events of the second and third Jurassic World movies, and is considered canon. Therefore, this campaign can be seen as a companion of sorts to players who wish to expand their knowledge of the movie universe. Starting off in arid Arizona, the DFW campaign is essentially a story-based tutorial, examining the DFW's role in capturing and rehabilitating dinosaurs that have escaped across the mainland after the events of the second movie, and also logicalizes on how the dinosaurs are thriving on the contiguous North American continent. It's quite a stark contrast to the gameplay of the first game, as that was more or less breeding and showcasing of the dinosaurs on the Costa Rican islands. In this campaign, there's a lot more interactivity with wild populations and ensuring a balanced ecosystem to prevent future conflict between humans and dinosaurs. But nevertheless, it is exceptionally short and easy, with an average runtime of less than 3 hours, and will leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth if they were expecting something more substantial. With the Dominion expansion, a new 2-mission campaign explores the immediate before and after of the third movie, from Biocin's point of view and Claire and Owen's post-disaster cleanup crew, respectively. In the first mission, we get to meet some of the cast from the Dominion movie and explore how Biocin takes over the mantle of InGen and Masrani operations, creating their idealized sanctuary. Of course, the mission teaches players the new mechanics and buildings offered in the DLC, and introduces the new dinosaurs, such as our latest fuzzy feathered friends. This is pretty much the prologue of Dominion and is set up in a way to flow right into the events of the movie. The second mission is the immediate aftermath. To avoid spoilers, it's more or less another tutorial of the other mechanical features in the DLC and accompanying update. The story, however, ends on a kind of flat note. It's mostly some post-apocalyptic style cleanup and rehab, trying to save the dinosaurs again, so they can thrive without us again. But despite all this, the Biocin campaign is much more substantial in content in a more traditional campaign format compared to the base game DFW campaign.
Just the right people in mind.
To make up for the campaign's literal shortcomings, a new Chaos Fury mode is added. Each mission focuses on each of the individual movie settings, where players are thrust back in time to re-envision each respective park and hope to change their doomed destiny for the better. Ever wanted to make the first Jurassic Park work? Or how about trying to execute the infamous San Diego concept? Or maybe you want to stop the Indominus Rex from ruining Jurassic World. Chaos Fury provides a hefty challenge and time sink by issuing difficult objectives, challenging the player heavily by opening up more frequent disasters and scripted sabotage events. It is here where the truly irritating and cumbersome nature of gameplay mechanics are exposed, and by the end of it, I didn't really get any satisfaction from grinding through them. They were essentially just super hard challenges without much reward. Although getting a recap from all the movies with those CapCut 3D stills and meeting the old cast was a bit sentimental, it wasn't enough to gloss over the fact that Jurassic World Evolution 2's campaign was a severe letdown. The base campaign was short and trivialized as a glorified tutorial, in which the developers tried to make up for by including an awful grindfest that is Chaos Fury, veneered by its own cheap brand of lousy nostalgia. Some fans of the canon may get some mileage out of this whole experience as a companion piece to the movies, but it doesn't stand out as a compelling standalone game to the greater Jurassic Park/Jurassic World universe. Jurassic World Evolution 2 released to an incredibly dire standard at launch, made worse by cut content, technical issues, and the fact that players were forced through all of the campaign and Chaos Fury modes to unlock things to play with in Sandbox. Thankfully, most of that nonsense is no longer the case, with 4 major updates over the past year rectifying many of these complaints, each update corresponding to the DLC releases. Because of this, quite confusingly, the updates don't match the version numbers. The so-called Update 1 is patch version 1.2, Update 2 is version 1.3, and so on. But anyways, let's go through all the DLCs and updates in chronological order. The Early Cretaceous pack released exactly a month after launch in December of 2021, almost as if this collection of species was meant to be in the base game but was somehow cut from release in order to justify an early cash grab DLC. The pack features its flagship star, the Kronosaurus, among the largest of pliosaurs and found from Australian remains. Another Australian species, the tank-like Ankylosaur minmi, followed by 2 Chinese species in the Pterosaur Zungaripterus and the Stegosaur Wuerhosaurus. From this, most could infer that Frontier developments would follow a pack template that features 2 dinosaurs, 1 flying and 1 marine reptile. The corresponding Update 1 added the DFW design buildings to Sandbox mode, so you can have a Park Ranger, Federal Reserve themed appearance more commonly seen in the campaign and the recent third movie. My favorite feature of this update was a randomize button available for genome editing and building customization. Now, instead of creating a homogeneous batch of dinosaurs with the same appearance, each egg can be randomized in skin pattern and color, creating a personal uniqueness to each individual dinosaur in the batch. Following on the popular release of the Camp Cretaceous Netflix show by DreamWorks Animation, the Camp Cretaceous Dinosaur Pack features technically 2 new dinosaurs and 2 variants of existing dinosaurs. The Scorpius Rex hybrid and the Monolophosaurus are new additions, but Oranosaurus and Kentrosaurus receive a model variation that was featured in the animated series. To make up for the perceived loss in value, the pack also includes 8 new dinosaur skins for 5 existing species that resemble depictions from Camp Cretaceous, the highlight of which has to be the Parasaurolophus glow-in-the-dark Lux skin. Update 2 removed the limitation on Sandbox requiring complete playthrough unlocks, so players don't need to slog through either the campaign or Chaos Fury to have a fulfilling Sandbox experience. It also added the species viewer to the main menu, first-person view, and lots of free decorations. These additions are super neat, and many players that have not returned since launch will probably find a new lease of life with these features, and it's probably the most significant post-release update for the game so far. Launching alongside the release of Jurassic World Dominion, the Biosyn expansion is an attempt at a fully fledged, expensive but content-heavy DLC, in relation to others of course, containing 2 new missions in a separate Dominion campaign, a new Chaos Fury mission specifically about Owen setting up his own dino rehab center in the snowy Sierra Nevada. The Biosyn expansion features a host of new mechanics, hydrothermal power stations as clean energy, an amber mine where players progressively traverse deeper and richer amber deposits to acquire DNA, a new Hyperloop system seen in the movie as a condensed, clean transportation option, research outpost for intimate viewing of dinosaurs, and invisible fencing for a concealed method of containment. However, only a few of these features are available in Sandbox. I especially wanted the amber mine mechanic as an alternative source of fossils. I don't get why this expansion forces the player to pay a hefty amount if it can't be enjoyed in the only game mode that really matters. On a more positive note, the Biosyn expansion does feature 4 new species as well, in the popularly requested Ferrozenosaurus, Dimetrodon, the sky giant Quetzalcoatlus, and the feathered Pyroraptor, all making their on-screen debuts in Jurassic World Dominion. Furthermore, there are model variants of the Dreadnoughtus and Giganotosaurus as seen in the movie, as well as some cosmetic skins for existing dinosaurs, the highlight of which is the feathered T-Rex skin. Also, the Biosyn Sanctuary map should prove to be a popular staging ground for player operations. Its large, circular, flat space in a forested wetlands environment, it's become one of my favorite sandbox maps. Update 3 is mostly highlighted by the new dinosaur wrangling feature for the ranger teams and a new DFW guided tour ride. Overall, a pretty lackluster update.
Sports a vivid crest upon its head. Not only does this hollow sonorous chamber...
Returning to standardized dinosaur packs, the late Cretaceous pack features the sauropod Alamosaurus, the southern carnivore Australovenator, the flying Barbaridactylus, and the marine Styxosaurus. Update 4 added manual control over aviary and lagoon drone tasks such as tranquilizing, medication, and photo capture. It also added decorative elements to lagoons. Players can attach guest decorations around the edges of lagoons and some aquatic paraphernalia to the bottom, improving customizability somewhat. But I feel like they could have used this update to really flesh out marine reptiles, but alas. Finally, for the first year anniversary update, a new guest attraction was given to all players for free. The zipline is a researchable building placed on the enclosure walls, allowing guests to zip across and get intimate yet thrilling views of the dinosaurs. I find it great for sauropod paddocks. Personally, I would have liked to have seen a species being added as well, sort of like Planet Zoo, but we'll get what we can get. Modding support has never been a Frontier Development's agenda, the entire scene pretty much relying on community projects. Without Steam Workshop integration, the best source of mods and the only official site endorsed by the mod making community is Nexus Mods. And so most mods need to be manually installed and are prone to technical limitations, as well as requiring mod authors to update every time there is an official patch. However, since the new species breakthrough in the first game and Planet Zoo recently, new species modding is entirely functional in Jurassic World Evolution 2, so players can import quite a few new dinosaurs, flying reptiles, and marine reptiles to their roster. There's also several overhaul and quality of life improvement mods to make the game less tedious and micromanagement heavy, but nevertheless, modding progress is directly tied to mod tool development, so only time and effort from the modders themselves can harken in more ambitious mods, because Frontier will certainly never do anything to help them. With the end of the movie trilogy and no more potential sequels to worry about, the framework for flying and marine reptiles have been implemented, and hopefully the developers can support Jurassic World Evolution 2 for at least a little bit longer than they supported the first game. I'm quite excited about potential pack concepts, as the packs are quite reminiscent of what Planet Zoo DLC packs are doing. We don't really need campaign expansion or story-based content anymore like what the first game tried to do. I mean, the movies are finished after all. Instead, they should focus on these cheaper packs with 4 species each, representing diverse parts of the world. Prettier landscapes and new environments break up the monotony of the first game, with small improvements to the UI ushering in some nice quality of life. Jurassic World Evolution 2, however, suffers most tragically in its stability and performance, 6 out of 10. Using the previous game's roster as a foundation, this sequel expands upon it even further by introducing a diverse array of flying and marine reptiles to complement the larger film universe. The portrayal of animals still look as slick and detailed as ever, and their depth and realism has taken a leap above its predecessor, 9 out of 10. Although many new features were introduced, somehow the frustration curve has been elevated. The fact that this game has tried to experiment with new avenues and still flopped miserably at all just cements the reputation that Frontier Developments cannot for the life of them execute the management part in any of their simulation games. I somehow prefer the more simplistic gameplay from the first game. Thank God for Sandbox, 5 out of 10. The campaign was disappointingly trivial and short. Chaos Fury, disappointingly grindy and inconsequential. Nostalgic for nostalgia's sake. Again, it adds fuel to the fact that Sandbox is the only mode worth playing, 4 out of 10. Updates and DLCs on the whole have been positive and have improved the game past its dreadful state at launch, but the score is penalized here for non-existent mod support. Future DLC prospects at least look a bit better than the first game, 7 out of 10. My overall rating for Jurassic World Evolution 2 is 6.5 out of 10. In a vacuum, it's a decent game, but compared to the first game, it has only meagerly improved. At $60 US, Jurassic World Evolution 2 is priced at the standard AAA range, which I absolutely cannot recommend it at. Several recent sales have seen the price plummet to less than half of the retail price, however. My final verdict is that despite many misgivings upon release, the game has adequately improved to an acceptable standard, but it still does not justify its massive price tag. Because the game is so pricey for only being a few years launch after the first game, it's too expensive to shell out $100+ for the base game and DLCs after already shelling out $100+ in Evolution 1. So, only buy this game if you have a keen interest in absorbing everything about the Jurassic World canon, including all the events leading up to and after the Dominion movie, and have had an enjoyable experience in the first game, ready to embrace even more prehistoric animals. If you've just enjoyed the first game and are considering purchasing this sequel, I strongly encourage to wait for a sale and treat this as a major expansion pack. Everyone else should do the same or skip entirely. Most of the new novelty, including the new dinosaurs, wears off surprisingly fast. 5 prehistoric animals and some assorted vehicle and building skins for a hefty price tag of $18, none of which are essential or must-haves, especially Huayangosaurus, which should have been part of the base game. Get it on sale. At $2 a piece, 4 total species is a lot more digestible at this price range, although 2 herbivores can be seen as slightly less valuable, but overall a decent start to the DLC range. Slightly more expensive than standard packs, yet providing less meaningful content because the 4 species are really 1 new species, 1 new hybrid, and 2 model variants coupled with some skins. However good they are, I can only recommend this pack for truly devoted fans to the series. Everyone else should get it on sale. Content heavy like the DLCs from the first game, this expansion pack features a dedicated companion campaign for the latest movie, a new Chaos Fury mission, a new map for Sandbox and Challenge mode, as well as new dinosaurs and skins, feathers included. It is quite expensive, however, even for what it offers. Get it on sale. Jurassic World Evolution 2's most recent pack is its best, a nice varied selection of species from across the globe with striking designs. If this is the standard, then it's a good one to snap up and a good template for the future. As our generation says our final farewell to the Jurassic World trilogy, which has petered out to a tired and uninspired ending, we look upon its companion game in Evolution 2 as an astute metaphor on the canon's morals of over-commercialization. Universal Pictures has well and truly milked this fanbase dry, despite the hubris the films have tried to message. We all need a break from dinosaurs, because recently they've lost a bit of their special significance with this constant exploitation of the franchise. And so, we'll wait, together, perhaps a little bit longer and a little more patiently now, for a more complete, a more well thought out, a more encapsulating prehistoric animal experience. This game was not that. It was close though, and it will keep some fans of this universe invested for a little while longer. This was Jurassic World Evolution 2, a year in review. If you've enjoyed this review, be sure to subscribe for more. If you want to support the channel further, consider supporting us on Patreon for as little as $8 a month to help us make more analytical, in-depth content.